So we are entering into our fourth week. It's a third of the way through the semester. You may be finding a few things right now. You might be finding that your routines are starting to settle in. You're starting to get a sense of how to balance responsibilities, family and study and work. You may find that there isn't a lot of margin though, so that if there's something unexpected that happens, some challenge that comes up, some event that happens, or some news, you might find that all of those routines just go out the window. So they can be really fragile at this point, but that's normal. This is the beginning of the semester and the beginning of your first year, so this is normal. One of the things you also might be feeling at this point is we have a week until reading week, and so you might be thinking, okay, if I can just make it to reading week, I'll be able to get caught up, or I'll be able to get a better handle on my routines. Again, I want to affirm that that's part of this. And even as a professor, I think, okay, I'm going to get to reading week, and I'll get caught up with reading, with grading, with preparation. So we're all in this together. I'd like for you to take a moment and to pause this video, and I'd like for you to simply lift to God a couple of sentences about how you're feeling about this week. And if words don't seem to be able to capture it, I encourage you to have a sense of the feeling of what this week is bringing up in you, and just simply lift that to God and meet with Him over that. So this week we're turning to Psalm 84. We've spent our 3 weeks on Psalm 42, and so a new one. And you're going to be reading it just like we've been doing. You're going to read it and let things rise to the surface and pray those through. I'm going to have you interact with it in different ways over the next 3 weeks. But one of the lines that I'd like for us to reflect on together is that in the midst of these fragile routines and our long days of work and study and responsibilities, is that line, blessed are those who make you their strength. So one of the things is that I think we interpret Paul when he talks about how he is weak, then he is strong. When I feel weak, then I am strong. And it's an admonition that maybe we should always be feeling weak. And if we're feeling strong, maybe that's our own strength. So there's this interesting play here that I want us to be paying attention to. That feeling strong or capable or confident to meet a current challenge somehow may not be Christ-like. Now, if this is not your experience, if you're like, yes, absolutely, I know God is with me, I'm confident, I feel capable in God's strength to be able to meet this challenge, great. But if you're feeling, oh, I don't know what that means to actually feel God's strength in me, I would say it's not so much the feeling of the strength, it's where that strength is coming from. And so as long as we have an intention and determination that that strength is sourced in God and not just simply our own reserves, the feeling, that power, that sense of capability in God to be able to meet the challenge that's before us, I think is a wonderful thing, a God-given thing. It's something that we should seek. I had you listen to the Rachel Platten song, partly because there's a fierceness in that song, and that fierceness, as you read in the article about how that song came about and her own struggle with being a musician and using her gifts, and then taking 2 years off and then coming back and saying, this is it, I'm going to just do it, and now having a global bestseller. There's a fierceness of commitment to stay with her music, and I think her model of that fierceness could give us a little bit of a pointer to how God calls us to be fierce in His strength as we follow Him and as we follow His call. The Piano Guys version, I think, beautifully captures this more closely by adding Amazing Grace into the mix of the song and the melody, and then also starting the whole video with the verse. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. His grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. There's a joy that is evident in their faces as they play the music, the stunning scenery that if you take a look at, the Scottish Highlands are a very harsh environment to live there, to eke out a living. And so there's a fierceness to the people, the culture that has been formed there. The history of the Highlands also, there's a fierceness, and their battles for independence. And I think all of that comes into play in the version of the Piano Guys. It gives us a taste of what a determined fierceness in the Lord might be like. I'm reminded in my own life of what this looked like for me. I spent 10 years working on my doctoral degree. 5 years in classes and working multiple jobs, and then 5 years working on my dissertation and working multiple jobs, trying to make a living, make do. And always feeling like a student, even when I was in positions of responsibility as a chaplain or working on staff at a church, always still feeling like a student in the sense that I was not done. I still had this thing to finish. And especially the last year of it, it was a particularly difficult time, but God poured power into me through friends, through different things that God brought into my life, and especially through 2 quotes that I had up on my corkboard right in front of me as I was writing. The first one was from Isaiah chapter 50, verse 7. Because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore I have set my face like flint, and I know I will not be put to shame. I knew this was the call. I knew that I was called to be a professor, and I knew that this was the only way I was going to be able to fulfill that call. And then, I have a love for fantasy, sci-fi, and the Lord of the Rings. There is an amazing monologue in the beginning of the Two Towers movie, Gandalf's battle with the Balrog. And he says, as he's in the midst of this battle, through fire and water, from the lowest dungeon to the highest peak, I fought him, the Balrog of Morgoth, until at last I threw down my enemy and smote his ruin upon the mountainside. Now, for me at that point, my enemy was the dissertation and everything it brought up in me. And so there was this sense of I was in the midst of a battle to even complete this. Even after all the work I had done, even at the very end, I considered not finishing. But God was right there saying, no, I'm giving you the strength to be able to do this, to fight this battle. So it's okay to feel the Lord's strength and power coursing through us. It's okay to take heart, to feel capable in the Lord, to go forward into whatever it is that you feel is your fight or your struggle at this point. It may be studies, it may be personal circumstances, it may be an illness or family a concern in your family. Any of those things, go to the Lord, I encourage you, and to seek His strength in dealing with them. Take heart. Jesus has overcome the world, and I encourage you as I encourage you each week. Let us go fresh into this week anew. God has got us.